Hello and welcome to Granada Reports, live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello there. On the programme this evening.
Targeted by trolls. A special investigation into the online abuse faced daily by Northwest MPs, including misogyny and even threats to kill.
The local police force Lancashire here are investigating two different incidents for me at the moment. One was a death threat, one was continued abuse via email where a gentleman sent me over 60 abusive emails.
Only a drill. The 999 services rehearse their response to a terror attack on Blackpool Promenade.
Ready to remember his comrades, James from the Isle of Man will be one of the last Burma veterans to march to the cenotaph on Sunday.
A tale of Disney and diversity. Two great loves in the life of Lioness and Manchester United star Nikita Paris.
And we're noticing a few more bare trees now here in the northwest. I'd say quite a few leaves coming off tomorrow. It's going to be windy. The forecast is coming up later.
Well, first tonight's the online abuse faced day after day by many of our region's MPs.
Yes, we've taken part in a special investigation into abuse against MPs on Twitter. It includes death threats, male MPs regularly being called liars, and women MPs often targeted by sexualised comments.
The government is currently working on an online safety bill, which it says will help make social media sites like Twitter more accountable.
But one of our North West MPs, Scott Benton, the MP for Blackpool South, says the level of abuse he faces is making him reconsider whether he should stand at the next election.
This special report from Emma Sweeney contains some upsetting detail.
Parliament. It's the cornerstone of our democracy, the place where the politicians we elect represent our interests and concerns. Over the last few years, thanks to social media, it is easier than ever to access those MPs, but it is a double-edged sword. Earlier this year, I joined dozens of other journalists to analyse almost 3 million tweets mentioning MPs over a 6-week period. We wanted to find out just how many could be classed as abusive.
So we found roughly 130,000 of those tweets would classify as toxic, and that's about 1 in 20 of the total received. What would a toxic tweet actually look like? Well, the algorithm we used was trained not to pick up things that might class as robust criticism in the political domain. So we were looking at things like severe misogyny, homophobia, racism, and attack on a person's very nature.
Moronic, an evil toad, that's an interesting one. And these are the more pleasant ones without various expletives attached to them.
Scott Benton is a Conservative MP for Blackpool South. 2.5% of the tweets he received during this period, in other words, almost 350 of them, were toxic.
As a civilised society and as a free society, we have to ask whether or not people have a right to say those things. I would ultimately say they do. So I don't necessarily have a problem with some of those tweets, as unpleasant as they are. In my mind, it's some more serious tweets when we talk about potential death threats online, when we talk about being called words such as Nazi.
Would it make you reconsider your intention to stand in a future election?
Potentially. It's something I'm considering at the moment. So just to give you an example, the local police force Lancashire here are investigating two different incidents for me at the moment. One was a death threat, one was continued abuse via email where a gentleman sent me over 60 abusive emails. That's not even including the online day-to-day Twitter and Facebook discourse and some of the abuse.
MPs from all 3 main political parties were subject to online abuse in the northwest during the 6-week period. The Shadow Chancellor Angela Rayner received the most toxic messages, with almost 3,400.
Now, what tends to happen is a member of Parliament will come out, they'll speak about an issue that they feel quite strongly about, perhaps they'll even come onto a news programme like this one, and often that is the catalyst for that spike in online abuse.
But exactly what type of abuse a person receives often depends on their gender. Male MPs, for instance, were more likely to be called liars, while their female counterparts were more likely to be called thick and ignorant and subject to sexualised language.
Actually, quite commonly we'll see people trying to make maybe a valid criticism or kind of hold an MP to account, and they almost veer into incivility and abuse almost by the by. So they almost do kind of like drive-by misogyny while they're trying to hold them to account for maybe like policy.
Labour's Lucy Powell received almost 170 abusive tweets during the 6-week period. As a Shadow Culture Secretary, she believes the government needs to act fast, starting with the much-delayed online safety bill.
What's so important about this bill is that it will give the regulator, Ofcom, powers to really scrutinise the business models, the algorithms, the engagement tools that so reward sensationalised disinformation, hate speech on these platforms. They are actively rewarded on these platforms because they foster engagement and they monetize hate and they monetize misery.
Wherever people stand on the debate, most will agree social media has given a new platform to extremes of opinion, and that some of those opinions go beyond free speech. We've seen 2 MPs murdered in the last 6 years, and elected members I've spoken to fear the toxic level of debate online is creating an environment where they are seen as fair game for abuse and violence.
Well, Emma joins us now. Emma, we have seen some big changes at Twitter over the last couple of weeks. Have they said anything about this?
When you're talking about those big changes, you are, of course, referring to the recent takeover of the platform by Elon Musk. Now, the journalists that worked on this particular piece did contact the platform for a response, but they were unable to provide one. But in the past, Twitter has said that it is committed to opposing abuse as outlined in its hateful conduct policy. And on its website, it talks about abuse motivated by hatred, prejudice or intolerance, and particularly when it targets those groups of individuals who historically have found themselves marginalised on the website. It goes on to say, for this reason, we prohibit behaviour that targets individuals or groups with abuse based on their perceived membership in a protected category.
And you mentioned the planned online safety bill. When is that going to become law?
Well, Anne, the short answer is we don't know. There is growing pressure, though, on the government to try and get this through in the next few weeks, because if it doesn't go through before Christmas, and there's a real worry that it actually could fall completely. So it's been delayed, firstly, because of the change in Conservative leadership, and more recently, because the government is said to be re-examining a part of the bill that would tackle legal but harmful content. So we don't know when it's going to go through, and we don't know what it will look like in its final form. But what we do know is the government has to walk that real fine line between allowing people the right to free speech, but also, combating that abusive behaviour.
Yeah, there's a big difference, isn't there? Thanks, Emma.
Some breaking news for you this evening, and it's been reported that a man from Lancashire has been killed in the fighting in Ukraine. A fundraising page has been started online for the funeral of Simon Lingard, said to be from Blackburn. He's said to have lost his life fighting alongside Ukrainian forces on Monday. The page says the Ukrainian military has offered to fly him home.
We've just had a statement from the Foreign Office. It says we are supporting the family of a British national who has lost his life in Ukraine, and we are in touch with the local authorities in connection with his death. Our thoughts are with their family at this difficult time. We're waiting to hear from Mr. Lingard's family. We'll bring you more when we've got it.
Well, next, if you were in Blackpool last night, you may have seen or heard emergency services outside the tower.
Well, it was part of a joint training exercise carried out by Lancashire's Blue Light Services. Scenarios, which included volunteers, were played out to help prepare them for major incidents, including terror attacks.
And as our reporter Will Tullis explains, the emergency teams aim to learn lessons from the mistakes made by colleagues after the bombing of the Manchester Arena.
Police, fire and ambulance teams on Blackpool Promenade. Fortunately, this is just a drill. Last night, emergency services carried out a training exercise to help them better prepare for serious incidents. Over 300 volunteers were involved. They played the roles of civilians caught up in a terror attack.
The exercise tonight does involve a scenario that has a large number of fatalities and casualties, which tests some important plans for us.
Firearms teams fired blank rounds in a simulation of the worst case scenario: terror in a crowded public place.
Authorities have stressed that tonight's exercise is not in response to last week's Manchester Arena inquiry, which found severe failings with the emergency services, but Lancashire Constabulary have said that training scenarios like the one you're seeing behind me will leave them better prepared to deal with similar terror incidents.
Greater Manchester services weren't involved last night. A year before the arena attack, they took part in a similar training exercise. The inquiry chair called that year's exercise a disaster, with firefighters arriving 90 minutes late. But Lancashire authorities have said that lessons will be learned from those failings.
The chair of the public inquiry has made a number of criticisms and observations about the response of the emergency services. Nationally, policing are coordinating the response to that with focus and at speed, with chief officers in every force in the country working determinedly to put in place and get the learning from that to improve how emergency services respond to major incidents in the future.
For many families who have lost loved ones to terror, exercises like this one will feel too little, too late. But last night's training will hopefully prevent more tragedy in future. Will Tullis, ITV News, Blackpool.
This evening's other news now, and the family of a 9-month-old baby girl who died after an incident at a nursery in Cheadle have paid tribute to their girl with a beautiful smile. The incident happened at the Tiny Toes Day Nursery on Mellor Road in May. The family have said baby Genevieve deserves justice and that they won't rest until she gets it. The nursery remains closed.
The Deputy Mayor of Greater Manchester has announced she's stepping down from the role in the new year. Baroness Beverly Hughes has also served as the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for the past 5 years. She'll continue to work on a part-time basis to support the transition of the new deputy.
And Mayor Andy Burnham is backing Kate Green, the current Labour MP for Stretford and Urmston, as Bev Hughes' successor.
Bolton's very own Peter Kay has announced in a radio interview he'll be performing a show each month at London's O2 Arena for a year. It follows the comedian's announcement of his long-awaited comeback tour after 12 years. He'll be performing at the O2 until November 2023.
Not even Beyonce does that, does she? There's a lot of people want to see Peter Kay.
Good to have the man back.
Now, here's what's still to come on tonight's programme.
We're not old, are we? We've just been young for a very long time.
It's the classic story of love in later life. We're meeting some of the star guests checking into the best exotic Marigold Hotel in Salford.
And after a showery couple of days, things are set to settle down weather-wise through the rest of this week. However, tomorrow will be a windy one. The forecast is coming up.
And here's what's still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Mary.
Coming up for the programme, nurses vote for their first ever UK-wide strike. Walkouts are expected before Christmas as the NHS heads into its heaviest winter. The PM under pressure. Rishi Sunak admits he regrets appointing Sir Gavin Williamson. A near miss for the King. 4 eggs are thrown from a crowd in York. And Matt Hancock gets down with the creepy crawlies as he arrives in the Australian jungle. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
All those creepy crawlies, not for me. Next to one of our region's last surviving veterans of the Second World War, he'll be marching to the cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday.
James Fenton, who lives on the Isle of Man, fought in Burma and earlier this year reached the grand milestone of 100 years old.
Well, this weekend he's heading to London as one of the only Burma veterans well enough to travel to pay their respects.
In the first of 3 reports ahead of Sunday, James has been speaking with our Isle of Man reporter, Joshua Stokes.
At his peaceful home in Port Erin, James often thinks of his time at war.
And the memories that I have of actually Burma, they often come back to me. There were very many encounters where we got pretty close, but it was the infantry really that suffered all the casualties. We were shelled constantly by the Japanese. I mean, they were shelling every night, and we had to take protection for that.
James fought in the Royal Artillery in Burma. A regiment often known as part of the Forgotten Army.
Take a good look at them. Not that it'll help you to recognise any of them, their own mother couldn't.
But he spent many hours documenting his time at war.
I wrote a letter from the very first day in the army, and I wrote one on my very last day of the army, and in between I was writing letters, roughly about 3 letters a week, and it was like a complete diary. And I decided that they could perhaps make some sort of a book.
On the Arakan front, you'll find a strange collection of men, but as hardy and as fine as they make 'em.
Now, at 100 years old, James will be travelling to the Cenotaph in London for Remembrance Sunday, and he'll be one of the few remaining Burma veterans taking part in the march.
I just consider myself lucky, but I thought I really must pay my respects to all my friends and all the people who have actually suffered the effects of war. What I hope is that people will continue to remember the sacrifices that were actually made, and the friends that I knew that we'd lost.
Great for 100 as well.
It does.
OK, time for sport now. And will there be a warm welcome as a familiar face returns to Manchester City? Here's David.
Yeah, Raheem Sterling spent 7 seasons at City, won 10 major trophies with the club, and Pep Guardiola says the forward should be given a good reception this evening as he returns to the Etihad for the first time since joining Chelsea in the summer. Well, City against Chelsea is one of 3 games involving our teams in the 3rd round of the EFL Cup tonight. Elsewhere, Blackburn travel to the capital to face Premier League side West Ham, while Liverpool host Derby at Anfield, and Jurgen Klopp's assistant faced the media ahead of this one and said the team won't be distracted by all the talk of the club being put up for sale by its American owners.
They are acting in the best interest of the club. They try to take the club forward. I believe they always did. What I like about this club and about our structure, that we used to rumours around or unfair or whatever. We focus on what matters, and what matters is preparing for Derby.
Well, Everton manager Frank Lampard said his side were poor as they crashed out of the Cup last night. Lampard made 11 changes to his team as they lost 4-1 to Bournemouth. Morecambe were also knocked out, but it's better news for Burnley, who were through to the 4th round after coming from a goal down to beat League Two side Crawley 3-1. Well, elsewhere last night in the Championship, there were defeats for both Blackpool and Wigan, while in League Two, Ian Henderson made history for Rochdale as his goal saw them beat Salford 1-0. He's now become the club's all-time leading scorer with 130 goals. Now, what do winning the Euros and meeting the likes of Mickey Mouse have in common? Well, according to the Manchester United and England forward Nikita Parris, both have the same feeling. Well, Nikita was part of the squad that won this country's first major football trophy since 1966, and she told me she now wants to use that success to inspire more young footballers and improve diversity in the women's game.
Going into Disneyland and seeing your favourite Disney character, that's how it felt.
Winning the Euros and meeting Mickey Mouse. A unique comparison from England star Nikita Parris as she gave young footballers an insight into being a European champion. Manchester United forward has certainly been living a fairy tale after this summer's success.
Everyone wanting photos, everyone wanting just to speak to you for 2 seconds, you know, being a European champion, and, you know, we haven't won lifted a trophy in England since 1966, and that's what we're told all the time, we're reminded of it, but, you know, it's great to have the exposure and accessibility.
For Nikita, inspiring the next generation is just as important as winning trophies. And as one of this country's top black players, she's a leading role model for more diversity in the women's game. How important is that, the pioneering work and being out there and representing?
Yeah, definitely, you know, diversity in women's football, it needs to improve. You know, we know that as a team, we know that as a WSL, we know that as a FA, and it's important that we continue to have them role models and we have the opportunity to have young girls who can look up to players in the first team. When you see it, you can believe it, and I think we've got a long way to go, but we're progressing.
Squeeze in.
Well, Nikita, along with her club captain Katie Zellum, surprised aspiring footballers as they joined in the girls' training session at the opening of a new Fives football centre in Trafford. What was that like, meeting the England and Manchester United players?
It was very exciting. I love football because it makes me happy. If I hadn't had football, I would be nobody.
What's that like, meeting two United players?
Exciting and cool.
Why do you like football?
Because I love playing and it's a sport where I can have fun in.
Do you like playing even in the rain like this?
Yeah.
Despite being a Liverpool fan, Nikita joined rivals Manchester United in the summer. And they're the fifth club in the 28-year-old's career after spells with Everton, Manchester City, Arsenal and French side Lyon. You've played at so many top clubs. Where does United rank and how it is at the club for the women's game?
I think the club's really progressed the women's game and we continue to do that. As you can see now, they're in the infancy at the moment, but ultimately the ambition of the club is to push and be there for Champions League. And with talents like myself, players like Katie Zellum, Ella Toon, Alessia Russo, we've got a lot of quality there where we can push on.
Well, Nikita may now be playing in the red of Manchester, but she still has just as much support from her family in Liverpool. And that includes her boxing world champion sister, Natasha Jonas.
My sister started off in football but got an injury and went into boxing, and to be fair, what she's done in boxing is unbelievable, and she's holding 2 belts at the moment. She's got a fight on November 12th, which I'm wishing her all the best for, and that's more belts to come.
As a European champion, Nikita now hopes to follow in her sporting sister's footsteps.
Paris scores!
And become a world champion with England at next year's World Cup. Great to hear from Nikita. Well, finally to the Rugby League World Cup, where England's wheelchair team warmed up for the semi-finals by thrashing Ireland. The Wigan Warriors duo of Adam Rigby and Declan Roberts were among the scorers as England won by 121 points to 0 in front of almost 4,000 fans at the Copper Box. Now that is a thrashing, 121-0. Amazing.
David, thanks very much. Now, this is going to feel a bit like charades, but this is a book, a film and a TV series, and now it's a stage play.
Guess what it is? We're talking about the best exotic Marigold Hotel, and that stage play has arrived here in the Northwest at the Lowry Theatre, just a short walk from where we are this evening.
It's a heartwarming story of love in later life, and it's got an all-star cast. Our correspondent Victoria Grimes has been on the very exotic set to meet them.
Are we? We've just been young for a very long time. And that's how it feels here at the Marigold Hotel.
It's full of laughs, warmth, sadness, but most importantly, hope. And every member of the audience leaves the theatre with a lighter heart.
And hopefully a plane ticket to India.
An oasis of old-world charm in the midst of the hustle and bustle of modern Bangalore.
It's very encouraging for older people to have a play about them.
Yeah.
And
because we don't see that very often, do we?
No.
Really?
No, and
Not
also
often
it's an incredibly happy company. I can quite honestly say I've never had more fun on a tour than on this one.
Yeah.
Now, is that because Mr. Nicholas here has been keeping you entertained?
I'm one of these performers that likes to keep it jolly backstage, which is not always appreciated, because they worry whether I'm going to make it onto the stage. I don't take it too seriously, and that's what kept me going for the last 150 years.
I mean, what a heartthrob you
well,
are.
I did a show called Just Good Friends many years ago, which was very successful, where I played a bit of a heartthrob and a bit of Jack the Lad, and it's kind of stuck with me, which I'm very grateful for.
Jack the Lad and the Cougar.
Yes, exactly.
So you've not had any ladies thrown around?
No, I'm afraid not.
Yet.
No.
Damn.
Certainly no. No one over 70.
Time of our lives.
And Rula, for you, it's like coming home, I suppose.
It's always a lovely feeling coming back here. I miss my Corrie family. I've got a big crowd coming tonight. Darling Bill came yesterday. Don't you ever change, darling.
Have you been over for a tour yet, Paul? Of the
No, I wouldn't mind being in Corrie if anyone's watching. I did actually have dinner once with Pat Phoenix.
Did you?
Yeah, years ago.
Wow.
It was like having dinner with the Queen.
You never had dinner with Violet Carson's?
No, I'm not that old.
Mrs. Sharples, you're too old for this sort of thing.
Lastly, Paul, that you have had a bit of a career change recently and become a rapper.
I had a few hits in the 70s and a lot of show tunes, and I thought, well, it would be nice to do something new, so I did a song called Bad Bad Rapper.
Oh my word, I didn't know anything about that.
You've got to see this, it's
why haven't we got a copy of it?
They're living in LA, yeah, feeling kind of bijou, rapping like a bro, anything to please you.
Yeah, it's quite a departure from Dancing with the Captain and
But
Grandma's Party.
But not much of one.
With my boys, chilling, checking YouTube, Googling the rapping of Vanilla Ice Tea Cube.
You just got to keep up with the kids, haven't you?
We aim to take Salford by storm.
And you will, I am sure. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Great stuff, and an exciting postscript. Also starring in the show is superstar Hayley Mills, famous amongst many other things for her role in the 1961 film Whistle Down the Wind. And a trip to the Northwest was a great chance to meet up with the child stars who played her brother and sister in the movie, Diane Paul and Alan Barnes. And Vicky was there for an emotional reunion.
Let's just set the scene for our viewers. Hayley, Diane and Alan haven't seen each other for a very, very long time.
50 years.
50 years. And you all starred together in Whistle Down the Wind. It's one of the most iconic films of all time. And Alan, I know you had the big line in the show.
It isn't Jesus, it's just a fella. Yeah.
That's the one. It isn't Jesus, it's just a fella. How is it to meet up today with
Just
these guys?
absolutely fantastic. And they're so sweet and the same. Their mouths and their smiles and their voices, and even though they're older,
Thank you.
they're the same. It's just so wonderful.
Well, you were a nice big sister.
Was I?
Yes.
Oh, I hope I didn't do anything horrid.
No, you were lovely.
Like pinch you when
No,
you weren't.
no, you're absolutely-
How is it to see Hayley today?
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. I've got a little tear in my eye. Yeah, it's surreal, really.
Yeah. It's so lovely to see you guys together. I'm sure you've got a lot to catch up on because it was 1961 when you were last working together. So thank you for sharing this
And they're
with us
going
today.
to come and see my show, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel.
They certainly are. You've been told you have to come now.
You have to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Love a good reunion. Here's Joe.
Mom, wet wipes, toilet or bin?
Bin. Why?
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Thank you. Very good evening to you. Really mild conditions through the rest of this week. Temperatures similar to the sort we'd expect in the middle of September. It isn't going to be wall-to-wall sunshine for the next 48 hours. There's some rain around and really gusty winds through tomorrow. However, into this weekend, there will be some sunshine to look forward to. Now, we're pulling in air from the south, effectively the Azores, well above average across the UK at the moment. Some strong gusty winds, though, through tomorrow, easing off on Friday. But our temperatures will peak on Friday at around 17 degrees. Now back to this evening. For most of us, largely cloudy skies, patchy rain and drizzle, and a murky old night if you're travelling Trans-Pennine, certainly. You'll notice into the early hours of tomorrow morning winds increasing for exposed western coasts. For most places, a dry end to the night, and for all of us, we avoid a frost. 8 or 9, the absolute minimum tonight. On to tomorrow, the sun will rise at 7:27, setting at 4:21. A windy start to the day tomorrow, particularly for exposed western coast once more and up on higher ground. Quite cloudy skies as well, I would have thought, but there will be some brightness through the day on and off. As well as that, out of thicker cloud, patchy rain and drizzle, spits and spots of rain in the air, and those gusty winds during tomorrow afternoon. It's mild though, 15 or 16 Celsius tomorrow. Looking ahead through the rest of this week, settling down with high pressure dominating. Friday, perhaps 17 degrees, and at the moment Saturday and Sunday look fine and dry, not quite as warm, but still above average. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Cleaned up well.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Yeah, not very Christmassy weather, but it'll start to look a lot like Christmas tomorrow because...
We're going to be at the opening of the Manchester Christmas markets. Lots of glühwein,
yeah,
but not too cold.
I love a good old Christmas market.
So do I.
Get some old wine down me. Always
Not too
enjoyable.
much, though.
A couple. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.